Boston mornings are often quiet, wrapped in snow, lost in their own thoughts. But that morning, for Emily Harper, the silence wasn't just about the cold. It was the beginning of the greatest hope of her life. Under the dim yellow bathroom light, she knelt on the floor. Her hands trembled, but her heart was restless. For the fifth time, she picked up the test resting on the sink. The two pink lines were still there, clear, steady, alive. The first time she hadn't believed it. The second, she checked under better light. The third, she took a photo. And now, the fifth time, she was just staring, as if those lines were speaking to her heart. You're going to be a mother. For Emily, this wasn't ordinary news. It had been 9 years since she'd started trying, back when she was just 26, when her body was stronger and her heart less broken. But 2 miscarriages had shattered her, and a chemical pregnancy had nearly pushed her into clinical depression. Doctors, medicines, prayers, and unexpected bleeding had consumed her life. And through it all, she had never truly been able to express her voice to Brandon. Brandon Harper, 36 years old, a successful attorney in corporate law who had reduced people to case numbers in his files and meetings. His face always looked calm, almost robotic, as if even his emotions followed logic. A navy suit, steel-rimmed glasses, and a default tone of, "Let's discuss this after the quarterly review." Emily remembered how, in the early years of marriage, Brandon would smile faintly every time she missed a period. Maybe this is it, huh? But that smile never reached his eyes. Today, it was Emily who was smiling, starting from her eyes, reaching all the way to her cheeks. She leaned against the sink, took a deep breath, wrapped the test in tissue, and walked toward the bedroom. Brandon, as usual, sat at the dining table, coffee mug in one hand, phone in the other, scrolling through ESPN headlines. "Brandon," Emily's voice was soft, damp with emotion. "It's positive." Brandon looked up for a moment, stared at her like she was a stranger and he was still trying to understand the context. Then his eyes dropped back to his screen. "Okay," he said. Emily just stood there, her heart pounding, clinging to the faint hope that he might say something more. A smile, a question, anything, but nothing. Brandon stirred his coffee with a spoon, added milk, and dove right back into his pointless sports updates. As if nothing had happened. Emily felt as if those 2 pink lines had already faded away. That day, the house was filled with an eerie silence. Brandon took his usual client calls, attended Zoom meetings, and ate microwaved pasta for lunch. But not once did he ask Emily, "How are you feeling? When's the doctor's appointment? Is it a boy or a girl?" Emily tried to console herself. Maybe he's just shocked. Maybe it's too soon. Maybe he'll open up later. But that later kept drifting farther away with every passing hour. That night, when she lay in bed, Brandon had already turned his back and gone to sleep. No conversation, no physical warmth. Emily turned over, placed her hand on her still flat stomach, and felt the pulse of hope. Is this really the man who once promised we'd raise a child together? The next morning, Emily called her best friend and coworker, Lena. Lena, a bold, curly-haired black woman, always gave her tough love. "Wait, hold up, he said just okay?" "Yeah, no hug, no smile, just okay." "And you're telling me this man wanted a baby?" I thought he did." Lena was quiet for a moment, then said, "Girl, you better wake up. That man's got a cold soul and you're about to bring warmth into this world. Don't let him freeze it." That day, Emily bought a deep blue diary. Every page was blank, but her fingers trembled, as if those pages were already filled with fear. On the first page, she wrote, "I nurtured a hope for 9 years. Today, it looked away from me." Days went by, and Brandon's behavior kept getting worse. He skipped her first ultrasound appointment, saying simply, I have arbitration with a client. When Emily tried to show him the framed ultrasound picture, he gave it a fleeting glance and said, "Nice," before flipping through legal documents. Emily started to realize Brandon's cool behavior wasn't just a personality trait, it was psychological distance. She began noticing every little thing. Brandon barely touched her anymore. He came home late and left early. He showed zero excitement about the nursery. And the strangest part? He never talked about the pregnancy. Not to friends. Not even to his sister Henley. Emily felt herself growing more alone with each passing day. But she was going to be a mother. And she no longer craved Brandon's validation. She only wanted the truth. Emily hesitantly accepted Henley's invitation. Her relationship with Brandon's family had never been warm, but Henley was different. College-educated, a bit stylish, and always dishing out passive-aggressive compliments, every smile laced with measured distance. Emily knew this family dinner was supposedly to celebrate Henley's new house, but she also sensed there was something else beneath the surface. On the call, Henley had said, "We just want to make sure you're okay, and celebrate this blessing." Emily wore a soft pink silk dress that still fit comfortably over her growing belly. She left her hair down, applied a little kohl, and forced a smile in the mirror, as if she was acting in a play, and this was just her role. Brandon, as usual, was dressed perfectly. Crisp white shirt, light cologne, and the same stoic face. He didn't even look at Emily when she got into the car. Henley's house looked like it belonged on a magazine cover. Stone walls, warm yellow lighting, and carefully curated shrubs. Inside, the decor seemed like it had been pieced together from Pinterest's top 5 boards. Everything was picture perfect, except the atmosphere. As soon as Emily walked in, she felt a subtle tension, like the air in the room had thickened. Henley hugged her, but it lacked warmth, just a performative gesture. "You look round," she said, wrapping it in a laugh. "I mean, glowing." At the dinner table, everyone had champagne, except Emily. Henley made a special announcement. "Let's all raise a toast for the upcoming miracle in the family, whether it's real or not." Laughter followed, but Emily's face went pale. Brandon quietly stared into his glass. No response, no defense. The conversation slowly shifted toward questioning the pregnancy. Henley casually said, "I mean, nowadays, with all those apps and stuff, women can fake anything, right?" Someone else chimed in. "Plus, you can't really track IVF. Brandon, you sure it's yours?" Emily looked at Brandon. There was one last flicker of hope in her eyes. Just one word, a mild objection, a simple, "Don't talk to her like that," would have been enough. But Brandon looked down at his plate and stayed silent. Emily gently set her fork down. Her palms were damp with sweat. Her heart was racing, but her face remained calm, unreadable. She understood. This wasn't just dinner. It was a character assassination disguised as celebration. A carefully orchestrated attack where every joke was laced with venom. Henley delivered the final blow while serving dessert. "You know, I've heard of women who fake pregnancies just to keep a man around. But Emily, you don't have to go that far. He's already here, isn't he?" Emily looked into her eyes. By now, her face had turned to stone. Brandon was still silent, maybe lost in the texture of the dessert, or maybe a quiet spectator of the ambush. Emily stood. She slowly pushed back her chair, picked up her small clutch, and took a deep breath. No one said a word, because they all knew what had happened. Brandon softly said, "Emily," but there was no weight in his voice. Emily opened the door. The air outside was cold, but it wasn't as cold as the humiliation she'd just felt inside. She looked back once and very gently said, "You didn't protect me. You joined them." And then she walked away, slowly but completely. That silence broke her from within that night. But at the same time, something new began to grow. a strange clarity, a strange fire, still burning even as everything else had frozen. Emily didn't pack much that night, just 2 bags, one with a few maternity clothes, the other with the baby's first ultrasound copy, prenatal vitamins, and her journal. She wasn't acting on a plan, just on instinct for self-preservation. At 2:30 a.m., she reached her cousin Leah's apartment, a small one-bedroom on the other side of the city. Leah opened the door, groggy-eyed and in an oversized hoodie, and let Emily in without a single question. Leah, 2 years younger than Emily, had studied journalism but was freelancing at the time. Her hair was cut straight to her shoulders, eyes always full of curiosity. But that night, they only held concern. Emily didn't say a word. She dropped herself onto the couch and, for the first time, cried while holding her belly, without guilt. The next morning, she told Leah everything. The dinner, Brandon's silence, the poisoned words that still ran like toxins through her. Leah listened without interrupting, then simply said, "You stay here until you feel like yourself again." Over the next few weeks, Emily built a new routine. She visited the nearby public health clinic, kept up with prenatal checkups, read books, and lost herself in novels borrowed from Leah's bookshelf. But every day, Brandon sent some kind of gesture, a clearance sale pink onesie for the baby, a nameless card saying, "Hope you're okay." Emily knew this wasn't guilt. It was control. Brandon cared only about optics. His image, of a successful, composed husband excited for his child, was beginning to crack. One day, a large cardboard box arrived at Leah's door. Inside was a full, flat-pack crib, like something out of an IKEA catalog. No note, no name, but Emily knew who it was from. Leah scoffed. "This isn't love. This is propaganda." Emily taped the box shut and left it in the hallway, like she was setting Brandon's influence outside the door. But Brandon didn't stop. He started liking Emily's photos on Instagram, sending indirect compliments through mutual friends. Emily looked so cute these days. Now it didn't feel manipulative. It felt threatening. That night, Emily wrote in her journal, "His silence has turned toxic, and every gift is a chain. But I will not be anyone's prisoner again." She began setting boundaries. No direct contact, no emails, no communication. She managed her prenatal updates on her own, with her doctor. Leah helped her create a small corner in the apartment for meditation, and slowly, Emily started connecting with the child inside her, not just as an ultrasound image, but as a voice growing within. Emily didn't get louder. She just got clearer. She began decoding Brandon's every move. Each gesture, a pattern of control. Each silence, proof of emotional neglect. She realized this wasn't just a fight against Brandon. It was against the version of herself that kept forgiving him, kept making excuses. She would apologize to no one now, especially not herself. Winter had begun. Leah's apartment now hummed with the soft warmth of the heater. But inside Emily, something else was brewing. Something heated not by the cold, but by the fire of truth. One Sunday afternoon, while Leah was out getting groceries and Emily was alone, deleting old contacts and messages from her phone, a WhatsApp message popped up from an unknown number. "I shouldn't be the one telling you this, but I can't keep quiet anymore. Carter." Emily furrowed her brow. Carter. The name was familiar. One of Brandon's old college friends. His roommate during law school and someone Emily had only seen twice, once at their wedding and once at a charity gala. She remembered a strange discomfort in Carter's eyes when Brandon had joked, "He's too soft for this world." Emily cautiously replied, "What is this about?" A few moments later, a long voice note arrived. Emily put on her headphones and hit play. Carter's voice was heavy and tired, as if he was finally unloading a weight he'd carried for years. "Emily, I'm sorry, But Brandon isn't the man he pretends to be. He wasn't scared of this pregnancy. He was pissed because it wasn't under his control. And this isn't the first time. After law school, during internships, he got another girl pregnant. She really cared for him. But Brandon coldly told her, "Get rid of it or get out." When she refused, crying, he leaked her entire mental health record, called her unstable. She eventually got an abortion, had a breakdown, and left town. Emily held her breath. Carter continued, "I never said anything. I was a coward. But now you're expecting. And I can't stand by and watch him drag someone else to that same doorway, alone, scared, and met with humiliation instead of support." Emily lowered the phone. Her world spun. She had mistaken Brandon's emotional detachment for trauma. But it was a pattern. A calculated, manipulative pattern he'd repeated before. That night, when Leah came home, Emily was sitting on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, holding her journal, a cool clarity in her eyes. "Everything okay?" Leah asked. Emily nodded. "Actually, yes. For the first time in weeks, it is." She played Carter's message for Leah, and for the first time, Emily didn't speak about Brandon with emotion, but with clarity. He doesn't fear fatherhood. He fears irrelevance. Emily made a decision. This child would not be tied to a toxic legacy. No name, no support, no acknowledgement. The baby was hers, born of her strength, raised with her truth. She told Leah, "I want to raise this child on truth, not pity, and definitely not on Brandon's approval." Leah simply held her hand and said, "Then let this be the last time we say his name with weight." From that night, Emily removed Brandon from her heart, a poison finally purged from her body. 6 years passed. Time had dried the tears from Emily's eyes, but a silence still remained deep within her. Not painful anymore, just balanced. Her daughter's name was Maya, now 5 years old, with light brown hair that shimmered gold when touched by the sun. Emily had chosen the name herself, without Brandon's input, without any family pressure. Maya was born at home, under the care of Leah and a certified midwife. It was the longest night of Emily's life, but the morning marked her truest beginning. Emily had never contacted Brandon again. She filed no custody petitions, requested no financial support. For Brandon, Maya was a closed door, one Emily never opened. Then, one day, nearly 6 years later, an email arrived in an old account of Emily's. Subject: "I don't want anything. I just want to see her, just once." Brandon had written that he wanted nothing, no rights, no affection, just to see his daughter once from a distance. Emily read the email and let it sit for days without responding. Inside her, a conflict stirred. Maya's right to know the truth, and Emily's right to shield her from poison. 3 days later, Emily replied with a single line. Saturday, 3 p.m., Riverside Park, bench near the carousel, no contact, no approach, just a look. It was a cold Saturday, but the sky was clear. Emily dressed Maya in a pink coat, braided her hair into 2 small pigtails, and gave her a favorite plush bunny to hold. Children were playing in the park. Leaves scattered on the ground, and the air smelled faintly of damp earth. Emily let Maya run toward the carousel while she stood at a distance, near a bench with a clear view. Brandon was already there. Black jacket, jeans, lightly grown beard, and an expression Maya would never understand. But one Emily would never forget. Brandon watched Maya as she ran with other kids, laughed, and occasionally glanced back at her mother. "You've seen her. That's more than you earned." Emily wasn't looking at him. She was watching Maya, her laughter, her running, her freedom. Brandon stood still, completely silent, unmoving, as if time itself had frozen. Then Maya waved to her mother from afar. Emily nodded slightly. Brandon was still standing there when Emily slowly walked toward him, expressionless, wordless. She stopped in front of him, looked into his eyes for a moment, and said, "You've seen her. That's more than you earned." Then she walked away without turning back, toward Maya, who was now stepping off the last turn of the carousel. Brandon sat down on the bench, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets, but something shifted in his eyes. Maybe regret, maybe unfinished guilt. But Emily didn't care. For her, this wasn't an emotional moment. It was just a door, opened once, now closed forever. Emily and Maya went home, and Brandon stayed behind, seated on a bench like a spectator who never got to play the game. Emily was no longer the woman who had walked out of Henley's dinner party 6 years ago, shaking hands, teary eyes, and a broken heart. Now she was a mother, but not the glorified strong woman trope. She was real, grounded, breathing, flawed, yet always rising. Her face remained calm, but her walk carried a steadiness, as if she had built an entire world within herself that needed no one's validation. Maya was now 6 years old, smart, observant, and often surprising Emily with her questions. She had never asked about her father, perhaps because Emily had never let her feel the absence. In their home was a bookshelf filled with stories Emily had chosen for Maya. Tales of single mothers, picture books about feelings, and some that gently touched the quiet that still lived deep within Emily. Emily had added pages from her old diary to Maya's baby book, as a file of truths Maya wasn't ready to read yet, but one day would. One day she'd know what her mother had seen, lived through, and how she burned and rebuilt herself. Emily's last interaction with Brandon was on that park bench. No calls, no emails, not even a shadow since. She never spoke of him to Maya, but every day she spoke to her about more important things: boundaries, trust, and a world that expected too much from girls but rarely supported them. One evening, as Emily returned from the grocery store, she saw Henley walking toward her. Slightly older now, but still walking with confidence, eyes scanning as always. Henley smiled and asked, "So, Maya looks like Brandon, huh?" Emily paused and looked directly at her, eyes steady, no fear, no anger, no lingering plea. She simply said, "He's being punished with the truth. That's enough." Henley stayed silent for a moment, then walked away, offering no response, as if she now understood Emily wasn't the same girl who could be humiliated at a dinner table. The following week, Emily bought Maya a small new painting set. Maya was beginning to express her feelings through colors, just like her mother. That night, Maya rested her head in Emily's lap and asked, "Mama, does fear melt?" Emily ran her fingers through her hair and said, "Fear doesn't melt, baby. But when we know the truth, it can't hurt us." Emily no longer needed closure, because she had chosen justice for herself. Not through courtrooms, not through revenge, but through quiet confidence that comes from writing your own story. Brandon still lived in the same city, perhaps at the same law firm, perhaps still lying to his reflection, but Emily had nothing to do with him. She had built a home from ashes, where silence didn't bring fear anymore, but safety. And Maya? She was Emily's living, breathing victory. Friends, if you also like the video, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video. Your one like and one comment gives us a lot of motivation to make videos.